Thank you, Minister, sir. Before we proceed to the next segment of the program, ladies and gentlemen, please be informed, as we mentioned in the early part of the day as well, that the SIEW opening keynote on global energy transitions is now open on Pigeonhole Live. You can now start submitting your questions via this platform. The moderator and speaker will try to address some of these questions later during the Q&A session. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it's with pleasure that I invite up on stage the Executive Director of the International Energy Agency, or IEA, for his keynote address. Please welcome on stage Dr. Fateh Birol.
Mr. Minister, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, a very good morning to all of you. It's a great pleasure to have been invited as the keynote presentation of this very important meeting. As most of you do, I go to many international meetings across the world, but I can assure you that this very meeting, this is the 8th edition, I understood, established itself as one of the most influential energy meetings around the world. So, congratulations to the organizers. I would also like to congratulate Singapore, as it is the 50th year of independence. We all know that the country achieved a lot economically, socially, in such a short space of time. So congratulations to Singapore. You have a lot to be proud of. In the next 30 minutes or so, I will try to give you an overview of our thoughts, expectations of the global energy markets, looking at all the key fields, and with a close eye on Asia, especially East Asia. Now, Mr. Minister also mentioned, we have seen there is a tendency, there is a data that the energy prices, oil, gas, coal, are rather on the modest side, but as IEA, the International Energy Agency, we are worried that it would mask a lot of challenges we have in front of us. First of all, these cuts coming from the low oil prices on the investment side may well have serious implications for the future energy projects. This is one worry we have. Second, we have low oil prices. That's true, but we shouldn't forget that the Middle East is and will remain the largest oil exporting region of the world for many years to come, and the current turmoil in the Middle East is at a level we have not seen since several decades. What is happening in Syria, Libya, Iraq, Yemen, they all tell us that oil security, energy security, is a major preoccupation for all of us. Second issue, in addition to energy security, that I would like to bring to your attention is the climate change. Very soon, in December, there is a very important meeting in Paris. And political momentum across the world is building in order to have a global agreement on climate change. And there are some important data points that I want to bring to your attention just ahead of Paris meeting. First of all, after many, many years seeing an increase in the global carbon dioxide emissions, last year, 2014, we have seen a pause in the increase of the emissions. A good news. But of course, we are not sure whether this pause is a temporary one or not. Second good news, at least we believe so, that several countries, many of them are in Asia, are cutting fossil fuel subsidies, which is a major problem for the countries' budgets and also for the carbon dioxide emissions. Because if you subsidize the fossil fuels, make their prices artificially low, it boosts the fossil fuel consumption and the bad news for the economy. Indonesia, India, Malaysia, Thailand, they are all making reforms in order to reduce subsidies, which are all most welcome. But despite that, we still see about 500 billion US dollar subsidies for fossil fuels globally. And another good news, renewables. They are growing strongly and overall in the world, but especially in the electricity generation in Asia. It's a very good news, I will explain in a moment. And plus, we see energy efficiency policies in many countries are bearing fruit, ranging from cars, trucks, to electricity consumption at home. So these are some policy developments giving us a hope to have an agreement in Paris, in addition to the political momentum growing, which I will explain in a few minutes. So we have two important pressure points in the global energy system: energy security, and the other one is the climate change. And here the question is, there will be definitely changes or transition, as we have the overall title of this very meeting. But the point is, are we going to be able to lead these changes by putting right policies in place, or we will be driven by events themselves? Let me turn to the prices. Oil prices, they were over 100 US dollar until recently, and we have today less than $50. And this is mainly, as Mr. Minister mentioned, ample supply and weak demand growth that I will elaborate in a moment. But we have also seen that the gas prices also went down substantially. Asian spot LNG over $18 per MBTU, it is now almost halved. And oil-linked import prices also saw a similar plunge. Not only that the gas prices went down, the differences between different regions of the gas prices also narrowed down, opening some new opportunities and challenges. It is not in this very picture, but very important for the gas markets, what happened to coal prices. Coal prices have been decreasing significantly for some time, mainly as a result of substantial increase of supply coming from Australia, Colombia, Indonesia, and South Africa. Supply grows substantially, and demand, mainly as a result of the slowdown of Chinese coal demand, is weaker. These two things came together. Strong supply growth coming from Australia, Indonesia, South Africa, and Colombia, and weaker coal demand also pushed the coal prices down. Now, lower energy prices are, of course, at least in the short term, good news for the consumers. But it has also implications that we need to take into consideration. For example, in terms of oil markets, what does it mean, so low oil prices? It means the following. We are seeing this year, in 2015, a big decline, more than 20% decline of oil investments worldwide. And when we look at the country-by-country basis, which we do at the International Energy Agency, we see that the bulk of this decline of investments come from North America and Brazil. And going further, according to our preliminary estimates, we may well see that next year, 2016, oil investments will decline further. If it becomes true, ladies and gentlemen, it is the first time since 2 decades we see oil investments declining in consecutive 2 years. And this may well have implications for the future oil markets. And our messages here, our attention to energy security should not be indexed to oil prices, which means lower the oil prices, lower attention to oil security may well be a very costly way of assessing the energy markets. We have seen in the United States a major growth of the light tight oil, or in other words, the unconventional oil. Only in 2009, the unconventional oil production in the United States was about 300,000 barrels per day, and today it is over 4 million barrels per day, 4.5 million barrels per day, a very big achievement. A very good news for the United States, and I would say a very good news for the global oil markets and oil security. But as a result of low oil prices, we are expecting that the US unconventional oil, or in other words, light tight oil, will decline considerably next year, about 400,000 barrels per day, as many projects do not prove to be profitable projects at these price levels we see. And we are already seeing a major decline in the activity, in the number of rigs which are active in the United States are declining about 60%, and this is definitely an important indication and heads up for the decline of light tight oil. And if the prices do not rebound, we may well see that this 400,000 barrels per day of decline may be on the optimistic side of the decline. Moving from oil to gas markets, LNG. LNG is growing very strongly, perhaps not as strongly as we would like to see for a few reasons that I am going to give it to you. But I should tell you that in the year 2000, the total LNG market size was about 140 BCM. 140 BCM, and there were only 12 countries that exported LNG. Today, we have 19 exporters, and the market size is over 300 BCM. Very good number. But when we look further, we see that around 2020, we reach a market size about 500 BCM. Very encouraging. Now, this is mainly the projects coming from Australia and also from the United States. However, the low oil prices, which have impact for the gas prices, have implications on the future LNG projects. While we expect the current LNG projects, which are under construction, will go ahead and create this 500 BCM of a new LNG markets, there are signs that we may see delays, cancellations in some cases of the LNG projects which have not yet the FDI. And this may well mean that if you don't have the FID, you may well see that the lower gas prices may end up with postponing several LNG projects. The main issue is here, ladies and gentlemen, LNG has to compete with other fuels. You cannot look at the LNG in isolation of the coal markets, renewables, or electricity markets in general. Having said that, the share of LNG in the global gas trade, which was about 45% in 2000, we expect to reach 60% in 2020. And here, Singapore's role is definitely a key one as a major trade hub in the region. I see for LNG major challenge, especially in this region, coming from coal. We need to be realistic. When we look at the current and existing power plant, we see that the operating costs, gas versus coal has a major advantage in terms of its economics, almost half of the price. Therefore, the message for the LNG industry is one shouldn't think that Asia is the center of growth of the demand. I invest, I produce, they will buy it in any case, may not be the right perception. There is a strong price comparison coming from coal, especially if there are no restrictions for environmental reasons in the countries that are